Welcome to Batya on NewsNation. I'm Batya, and we begin with what we learned about America this week. New York City officially has a new mayor. Zohran Mamdani, a socialist and the city's first Muslim mayor, won a decisive 50% of the vote, trouncing former Governor Andrew Cuomo in both the Democratic primary and the general. The left, of course, is jubilant, while the right has entered a period of mourning. But one line of attack on Mamdani has really been missing the mark. The right has cast Mamdani as an Islamist or jihadist who will cover New York City in a burqa. Now, it's true that Mamdani defended calling for a global intifada, an Arabic term that means a mass Palestinian uprising that always includes the murder of Jewish children. And it's true he doesn't believe planet Earth should have a single Jewish state on it, and that he doesn't believe the terrorist group Hamas should disarm. But when he refuses to condemn Hamas, Mamdani just doesn't sound like an Islamist. He sounds like every other college-educated simp whose moral compass has been broken by American higher education. You might say Mamdani's got 99 problems, but a burqa ain't one of them. This is not a defense of Mamdani, whose proposals range from the ridiculous, like government-run supermarkets, to the dangerous, like getting rid of overtime for NYPD officers. It is simply to point out that he's no Islamist looking to implement Sharia law. He marched for trans rights. His mother is a Hindu, and his wife, well, she doesn't look like that Statue of Liberty meme. What Mamdani actually is a trust fund socialist, a Nepo baby who's never worked a day in his life, who's lived off his parents' success and fame and achieved rather little despite having an extremely expensive education under his belt. In other words, he's a lot like the 20 and 30-somethings who voted for him, the over-credentialed and downwardly mobile Bushwick hipsters who think that they are the new proletariat because they aren't rich and have student loans. Mamdani is their patron saint, the Pied Piper of the trust fund socialist who wants the government to foot the bill of their failed dreams and aspirations. With his omnipresent grin and buoyant social media output, he almost makes it seem cool to depend on your parents well into your 30s. Despite all the hype from AOC and others, it just wasn't working-class New Yorkers who came out for him. It was transplants and degree holders. Those born in New York and who don't have a degree broke for Cuomo. Mamdani is not an Islamist threat to the West. He's the apotheosis of the Western elite, filled with the unique resentment of the highly educated but economically precarious, fused, in Mamdani's case, unbecomingly, with an immigrant who's been granted the greatest privilege on earth, but seems to view it as a burden that he must heroically carry. Joining me now is Glenn Beck, co-founder of Blaze Media and nationally syndicated radio host of the Glenn Beck program. Glenn Beck, thank you so much for being here.
It's an honor to be with you. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
It's an absolute honor to have you. So I know you're following this mayoral race that just concluded. Zohran Mamdani, New York City's Muslim socialist mayor. You have said that he's a combination of radical leftism and political Islam. Now, I'm with you on the radical leftism. I personally am not getting an Islamist vibe off of him. He's super pro-trans, for example. His mother is Hindu. He, to me, reads like just your garden variety Nepo baby socialist. What am I missing?
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Linda Sarsour has said that CARE was behind a lot of his campaign. And, you know, you're either a leftist, these are her words, you're either a leftist or you're an Islamist, or maybe she didn't say that, you're for Islam or something, but you can't be both. And they're going to hold his feet to the fire. So I don't know. You know, I know he is a committed Marxist. He believes in that. Where he stands on Islam, I don't know. I just don't like the fact that he is, you know, wanting to globalize the Intifada. That's a big warning sign that he, you know, it doesn't have a bad thing to really say about Hamas. Yeah. That's another bad sign. You know, that's not Islam. That's an Islamist that goes to that space, and a very dangerous one. Unfortunately, he's not the only one. I mean, we're seeing it happen, and they're all coming in sheep's clothing all over the West. If we don't pay attention, we're in trouble. There was a story I just read this morning. A small town in Germany that has a Christmas, fest that they do every Christmas in this town, and they just stopped it. They've canceled it this year because there is a mosque by the town square that would be offended, and the police said it will cause security concerns and it will cost more to protect the Christmas market than to run the Christmas market. And so the town had to stop it. I'm really tired of being called a bigot or a racist or not tolerant. I don't have a problem with the mosque. Why are you trying to destroy Christmas? What is your problem? I'm not the one who says, if you don't believe my faith, I can take you as a slave. I'm not the one that says, I can marry a child off at 14, 13. I'm not any of those things. And all of those things are against the Western culture. They are diametrically opposed to Western culture, and I find them evil. I don't believe in cutting people's hands off for stealing. If you do, that's fine. Find a place. The West does not stand with that. And I am afraid there are too many things, too many signs all around that people might say, I'm really not part of that, but they'll play footsies with it. I love the people that are, for trans people or, for gay rights and then march with Hamas. You're the first to be killed. You're the first to be killed. So if he's serious, that's trouble. If he's not serious about that and he's playing footsie with it, he is in trouble. He's in trouble.
Yeah, I think we're really in this moment where people are suddenly realizing that the West is not only worth defending, but in need of defending, the values this country was founded on. I think that's part of the reason that immigration has become the number one issue in the country politically, certainly for the right. But there's another reason, which is the economic piece of it. And I want to play you this clip from Mamdani's victory speech and then make the point and see if you agree with me. So let's have that.
Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties.
So what to me is so amazing about that clip is that it's all people who are immigrants who are working in these service industry jobs. And to me, it is so emblematic of what the Democratic Party is right now, which is you have sort of rich, overeducated, white, in most cases, progressives who now have built an economy that depends on a slave caste, often of illegal labor, to do jobs that were once jobs that gave working class Americans a dignified life. What did you make of this clip?
I would agree with you on that. I think you left out one part. This upper class, overeducated, white politician or mainstream politician, if you will, as they look, and they rail against the millionaires, and yet they're friends with all the billionaires. I mean, you're getting money from George Soros and Bill Gates and all of the Tides Foundation. And don't talk to me about how you don't like the rich. The rich are calling the shots in your own campaign, in your own life, and I find it reprehensible. The other thing I because I played that clip on the radio the next morning, and the thing I pulled away from is we are back to Teddy Roosevelt's hyphen American speech, that there's no such thing as a hyphen American. You're either an American or you're not. And as he said, I've met people who are naturalized Americans. I've met people who want to be Americans, who are more American than people who are born here in America. They come here for a reason. They understand it's the rights that they didn't have in their country at home, the protections that they had, the ability to break out of the class and be whoever it is they want to be. That every time that a politician starts dividing us into class and into hyphen Americans, you're planting the seeds of our own destruction. E pluribus unum, from many, one. And the one is just, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And governments are instituted among men to protect those rights. That's our one. That's our one. That's what we all came, my family came for in the 1800s. Your family came, and they all came because that was a completely different idea. And it's still unique. We're the only, look at Great Britain and how many, 4,000 people have been put in jail in the last 24 months. 4,000 people on speech. On speech, we're still a very unique place. That's our one. Come together on that, because I can live side by side with anyone. I don't care how they vote, if they believe in that. I can live next to of anyone of any faith, as long as you understand I'm the same as you. We're both children of God. You can call God whatever you want to call God. I'll call God, but I have the same rights, and I get them from either the universe or your tree or whatever, but it's a higher power than man and government.
Yeah, I wonder, though, Glenn, how you would advise Republicans who now live in Virginia, who know that their neighbors overwhelmingly voted for somebody who texted about fantasizing about conservatives being killed, their children being killed. I think a lot of people are feeling very betrayed by how their neighbors voted. You brought up Mamdani defending chants to globalize the Intifada. 70% of Jewish Americans living in New York voted against him. They are feeling very betrayed by their neighbors. You are a uniter and not a divider. You've been warning about civil war for 10 years now. What is your advice to people feeling so betrayed by their neighbors' choices?
This is going to sound trite, but it is the only thing that gets me through the day. And I mean, you we're an awful lot alike. You do this for a living. I do this for a living. We are paid to look at all of this stuff every day, digest it all, and then select the things that we think are the most important. So there's more than what we talk about that we look at every day, and it's poison for the soul. It's just awful. It's evil. It's awful. The only thing that gets me through is getting up every day and saying, I know these things are true about God. I know that I'm a child of God. We're all children of God, and he loves us. I know those things are true. He loves us, and he's not neutral in the affairs of man. He has it. Everything else, I'm just going to be grateful for. These are not enemies of ours. These are enemies of his. We have to do everything we can to stay on his side. He's never on our side. If you look at the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln talked about how is it that both sides can claim God? How in their churches can both sides say God's for slavery, God's against slavery? They're both fighting in the same name of the same God. He's not. We have to be humble enough to be on his side. And we've seen, I was very upset after the 2020 election. I didn't think it was a fair election. And I thought, we are doomed. We're doomed. And look what happened. That time gave Donald Trump a season to mature, grow into the president, take a breath and go, okay, what did I just experience? Who are the real enemies? If I had this chance to do it over again for 4 years, what would I do? In that time period where we were all, we're doomed, we're doomed, we're doomed, he was preparing. And if you don't believe that was a miracle that he turned his head, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a bigger miracle than that. He turns his head, clips his ear, and he lives. And now look at what we've had in the last 9 months. God's not neutral in these things. We have to do our part. But the worst thing we can do is sow division, sow hatred, sow distrust. We have to be aware of what's happening around us. We can't hide from it, but we can't play into it, or it'll cripple you. It'll cripple you.
So speaking of civil wars, there's also a mini one happening on the right now over Nick Fuentes, whether he should be debated with or not, whether his ideas should be given a hearing or not. You have people saying, basically, our enemy, if you're on the right, your enemy is the left. I don't have any enemies on my right. We need to fight the bad guys on the left. And then you have other people saying, actually, no, it's extremely important to police the kooks from our side, people like Fuentes, who's an avowed white nationalist. It's extremely important to insist that we can be American nationalists who are not white nationalists to protect that multiracial coalition that President Trump built, and to say not Fuentes. Where do you fall in terms of those two camps?
Well, I don't think he's worth anybody's time, quite honestly, because I don't think he actually believes anything. I think he's from this new culture that says the most outrageous things for attention, and I'm not going to give him any attention. I am very clear on anti-Semitism. I am very clear on who and what we should stand for. I am very clear on fascism, communism, authoritarianism, and the U.S. Constitution. So I don't think he's worth debating, because there's no logic behind any of that. It's rage, et cetera, and I think it's performance art. However, know that exists, and that will affect people. So now let's look and take another step back from that. Okay, so people hear that and take it seriously. It's our job to understand, why are they susceptible to that? Why? How is it that anyone with any sense of logic and decency can fall for that? They've been disenfranchised by something. What is that? I think we saw the beginning of this with why Mamdani won, and why the election didn't go. I mean, they never go the Republicans' way or the Democrats' way, whoever the incumbent is. But what was the problem? Why didn't we connect? Because we were still talking about cultural things, and right now, people are afraid for their job. They're afraid they can't make ends meet. Young people, if you grew up and you don't remember 9/11, so you don't remember a world with the airport where you can just walk up to the plane. You don't know. You don't remember, a time without the Patriot Act. You don't remember a time where the banks weren't getting bailed out by the federal government while your mom and dad are losing their job, or COVID, where your family lost their job, lost everything, and yet Home Depot can be open. But if I owned a true hardware store, I couldn't stay open. Somehow or another, they were immune, but I wasn't. If that's your framework, and you have grown up in a society where they've said to you as a young man, you're bad, you're the problem, you're racist, you shouldn't even be treated equally, you should be slighted because of your heritage, communism is neat, socialism is neat, and America is bad. If that's the stew you grew up in, that's why you listen to somebody like that. And we have to understand where they're coming from. We have to meet them where they live, not on our terms, on their terms, and understand that is real. Perception is reality. So that's their real reality, that this is the way things are. We must go in and meet them there. If we don't, we're never going to connect with them. We have to listen first. How did you get there? But only engage with people who are honest. If you ask honest questions and you are honest on both sides, that means I will change my mind if you bring up something that I look at and go, wow, I think you're right on that. Then that means I have to change my position. If I'm not willing to change my position, you've brought up something that should have changed my mind, and I recognize that that's a really good point. It should change my mind, but I'm not moving anywhere because I want to win. Then you're not an honest broker. You're not looking for truth. Only engage with those people who are looking for truth, but you'll only find them if you first come to them and say, how did you get there? What are you thinking? Tie those together, because I can't tie that together.
It sounds like what you're saying is, that if you tell young men for a decade that they're the problem, they're toxic, they're poisonous, their whiteness is a sin, and their gender is violence, they're going to start to believe you at some point.
Yes.
I think that's
and then you bring
really
them into
smart.
school, and you bring them into school and you say, hey, play by the rules. They watch their parents play by the rules, but they got screwed by the banks and everybody else. Play by the rules and go to school and you get a job. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Not anymore with AI and the way the world is changing. That is absolutely not true. It wasn't true from the beginning. Not everybody needs a Harvard education. Not everybody needs a $50,000 a year education. You don't need that. Some people should go to trade school. Some people shouldn't go to school at all. Some people are industrious enough that they can go out and they can find their own way. Companies are no longer looking at those diplomas with any kind of meaning unless you're in certain fields. So they feel betrayed and lied to, and now they've got this giant debt because they played by the rules. We have a lot of work to reach these people, because at the same time they're experiencing that, they have teachers and professors in their head every day spoon feeding them, this system is evil, this system is bad, this system is what's keeping you down, these people over here. Whenever you start to hear, you need me, or you need these people over here with me to keep you safe because they're out to get you, run from those people. Run from those people. Just use logic and reason, fix her in the seat of reason, question everything with boldness. You'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And you'll be able to be strong enough to hold yourself up. Everybody is being taught you have to be dependent on something else or a system. No, be dependent on you and God. That's it. That's you have absolutely everything you need to be able to succeed. Everything. You came fully equipped. God didn't make any mistakes. You're here in your situation for a reason. And maybe that situation is bad. My mother was an alcoholic. My mother was abusive. My mother committed suicide when I was 13 or 15 years old. Those are horrible things. Or are they? Because those things, when I grew up enough to understand, wait a minute, I could carry that around as a giant cross, or I could look at those things and say, yeah, but if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have this understanding, or I wouldn't have moved from this place to this place, or I wouldn't be the same person that understands when somebody is suicidal. I can understand them and relate to them and be able to help them. There's no such thing as bad unless you define it as bad, unless you carry it around and say, I'm just so screwed. Anybody who tries to tell you, keep stirring that anger, get away from them, get away from them.
So one of the big spreaders of anger and of that toxic messaging towards young people is the mainstream media, obviously. You spent decades working in mainstream media. In fact, you had a show on CNN as a conservative. Now, this is like utterly unthinkable in the CNN of today. The only way that conservatives get on that channel is when they're surrounded by a host of liberals to beat them down.
They were the longest elevator rides of my life. Literally, the doors would open up at the lobby and everybody would be talking and laughing and the doors would open up and they'd all see me and it'd go completely silent. Everyone would ride in silence until I'd get off my floor. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy.
That's hilarious. What happened there? How did CNN go from a brilliant decision of having someone like you on so that even if their audience did lean left, at least they understood what the smartest version of the right was, to what we see now today? Like, how did that happen and why?
I think, again, I'd have to go back to the schools. Journalists learn that they are there to further an agenda, whatever that agenda is that's right. That's not what journalists do. Journalists are supposed to question, and they're supposed to balance and look at all sides and then deliver that to you so you can make the decision. Now journalists believe they make the decision. They're just trying to figure out a way to convince you that that's the right decision. So journalism was completely turned upside down. And it's amazing how if you live in New York City just for a little while, you will see it is such a closed society. There is no such thing as the reality of the rest of the world or the rest of America. It is such a different place, and they don't think that they're the ones in the goldfish bowl. They think they think life is all like that. It's no life is like that, except unless you're in New York City, and especially if you're on the Upper East or West Side. No life is like that outside of that community. But they're so arrogant and so closed off. They don't know people that are different than them. They just don't.
And as a result, you're saying their media reflects that same bubble that
Yes.
they themselves exist in socially. I think that's completely accurate. You made a really good point that I think is totally accurate. You said that a lot of President Trump's economic agenda, the benefits of it are going to be felt in 5 years, in 10 years. I think that is totally accurate. My question is, what about people who don't have that runway? Cost of living affordability is going to be the #1 issue in the midterms. How does the president make the American people understand, A, the agenda, but also B, how does he make things easier for people who don't have 5 years to wait to see those benefits?
Though I don't think the country has 5 years to wait. I don't think the country has 2 years to wait. And this is my advice to the president. He does not need my advice, but if I were giving advice to the president, I would say, look at what happened, in this last election. People were not talking about big things. They were talking about how do I pay my bills? How do I make the pain of my everyday stop? It's the hierarchy of needs. The problem is to get to the place where Donald Trump knows we can have a successful country for decades to come. They're not going to be quick fixes. They're not. He is doing what the United Nations 2020, and then it became United Nations 2030, Agenda 2030. What the WEF did, what all of these people all over the globe tried for 2 decades to craft this framework to catch the West as it collapses, okay? Because it can't stand the way it was built in 1945. It doesn't work this way anymore. What he's done is he's come in and he said, yeah, we're not doing any of that. And beyond not doing any of that, he's building entirely new structures and framework. And so everything that you see, every bit of negotiation overseas, all of the negotiation with the tech companies and everything else, and bringing an onshoring things here in America, that's long-term strategy. That is the only chance we have of survival. The problem that we have is he's got to find some ways to reach down to the lowest level and help them so they can hold on a little longer and buy into this hope. that's going to be extraordinarily difficult. But also it falls to the American people to understand. And I don't know how you're going to get that. I think it's 60%, 57% of the American people cannot read past a 6th grade level. So I don't know how you explain things to people who can't read past a 6th grade level. I don't know how to explain things to people who are so apathetic or so convinced that they are right, that they will not listen to anyone else. But we as people have a responsibility to look beyond my pain and my day, and it's really hard, and my lifetime. It's our responsibility to say, what does this mean in 10 years, in 20 years? When you have kids, you begin to do that. When you have grandkids, you really do that. It's why I'm so concerned about Sharia law and Islamism all over the West. If we don't fight this with our mouths now, our kids and grandkids will have to fight it with machetes and bullets in the future. I'd rather fight it with my mouth and my spine now by standing up. We have a responsibility to say, this is going to hurt, but I see the vision, and please help me as much as you can, because I really want to be there, but I'd like to survive. But I see the vision, and this is the right thing. Choose the right path. It's not going to be the easy one. And I don't know if America can do that. I don't know.
Finally, I wanted to play you a video that I found while I was preparing for this interview. Let's have that.
Thank you, everybody. More importantly, we have Glenn Beck here, everybody.
I'm not sucking up to Charlie, because I just said this to him on my show. This guy holds a lot of the responsibility of the win. A lot of the credit comes to Charlie and what you've built. You're fantastic.
Well, it is. I will do better receiving that, but it's the Turning Point team that deserves the credit.
So that was,
he was an amazing man.
I assume, the last time you saw Charlie. It was right after the election. What's it like watching that back now?
A couple of things. It's amazing how you don't have awareness of the times that you're living in or the people that you're around sometimes. I mean, if you're standing with, the president, or you're in the Oval Office, you got it. But when you're around somebody who is a peer, like Charlie was, around somebody who's just doing what they do and kind of what you do, you don't necessarily recognize the time you live in and how important what that person is doing, how deeply important that is. I knew that Charlie was different. I had tremendous respect for Charlie. I meant what I said. He was the really one of the key reasons why Donald Trump won. We're going to feel that in the next couple of elections. Hopefully they get it together and can still pull it off, but he played a huge role in that. But I think we all should take the time and recognize the time we live in. We are so blessed, so fortunate to live at this time. We unlike generations gone by that didn't have great struggles. We're facing struggles like the greatest generation. We get to choose who we are. We get to choose, do we stand or not? Am I just going to close my eyes and hope for the best? Or am I going to be one of those people that, like Charlie, that people will remember, that our children can be proud of, that our grandchildren, when they're learning about these times, that they can say in school, in their class, to their friends or whoever, you know what? I know this story about my grandfather. I know this story about my grandmother. And I remember being told that when that happened, they stood against the storm. They stood all by themselves. And it was really a frightening time for them. But that's who I come from. What an honor to be able to live at the time that our stories can be told to our children and our grandchildren to the place where it will change their lives. My great-great-grandfather and great-great-uncle fought for the North in the Civil War.
Wow.
There's nobody of any importance in my family heritage. You can go back as far as you want. You won't find a guy who even, picked up the crap for the king. We're a bunch of nobodies. And I found my great-great-grandfather and great-great-uncle. They were captured, as a Beck would be. They fought for like 2 weeks and then they were captured. But they were put into the notorious Andersonville concentration camp. Mm-hmm. My uncle died. My grandfather survived, but was never the same. But just that little story said to me when I found out, I come from people who are willing to stand. I come from people who suffered and then went on and built something, that was good. I think we should appreciate that. And Charlie made me appreciate that more.
Glenn Beck, God bless and protect you. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor. Anytime. Thank you so much.
The Democrats had a great election night. They won big with far-left socialist Zohran Mamdani in New York City's mayoral race, but also with two centrists, Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill, in Virginia and New Jersey's governor races. The party is naturally jubilant, but in a way, their biggest problem just got a lot bigger. Who should be the face of the Democratic Party? The base-energizing Mamdani with his free buses and groceries and his promise to fight Trump tooth and nail? Or is it Sherrill or Spanberger with their promises to reach across the aisle and represent every constituent? With dueling victories, this question really just got a lot harder. With me to discuss is former Democratic Ohio State Senator and founder of We Are Somebody, Nina Turner, and daily reporter for the Washington Examiner, Salena Zito. Welcome to you both. This is thrilling for me because I just worship both of you so much. I'm so honored to have you here. So, Salena, let's start with you. The Democrats are very excited and are casting their big victory as a repudiation of Trumpism. Hispanic voters who had broken for Trump in 2024 flipped back in a big way in New Jersey. Are they right that what we just saw was a repudiation of Trump's agenda?
So what I think we saw happen is three very different but very important races in the country in terms of positivity for Democrats, right? What you saw in New York is something actually I've been covering and seeing in my own home city of Pittsburgh, where you saw people that were members of the DSA, right, the Democratic Socialists of America, win council seats, win a congressional seat with Summer Lee, and also sort of have a big presence in the mayor's office, right? Mm-hmm. And so you saw this excitement for left-wing populism, and the establishment Democrat Party was sort of like caught off guard. But then you look at New Jersey and Virginia, very different than New York City. And you look at my home state of Pennsylvania, and you see where a more moderating tone, that is touting a big tent, meaning there's room for everyone, having a great success and able to pick off voters that went for Trump. So I think both parties have a lot to learn from it, and not one size fits all. Like Shapiro and what happened in Virginia and what happened not as much in New Jersey, but what happened in Virginia, it can be very successful for the Democrats. But I don't think a candidate like the new New York City mayor would work well in Pennsylvania as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Nina.
Yeah, Selena's points are well taken. I agree with most of them. And Batya, congratulations on your show. And I'm extraordinarily excited to be here with you, and also Salena. I see it this way. It was a repudiation of President Donald J. Trump in a way. because President Trump himself ran as a populist. Now, you might not say he ran as a leftist populist, but he ran as a populist. He was going to bring the cost of things down. He was going to help change people's material conditions. And that heretofore has not happened. There's poll after poll that shows the anxiety that the American people are feeling over the cost of things, the cost of groceries, not making a living wage. Those challenges are real no matter how you swing on the political spectrum. One race in particular, so yeah, if you are a Democrat, there was something on the menu for everybody. Everybody got a little bit of something. And so that for Democrats is positive. I don't necessarily think that Democrats should think that they're going to dance their way into 2028, because just as the electorate showed very clearly that they are not pleased with President Donald J. Trump at this moment, they could feel another way as we approach 2026, 2027, and on our way to 2028. I will share with you, Batya and Salena, a race that has not gotten a look, where you have a young, vibrant African-American woman from Dayton, Ohio, by the name of Denise Turner Sloth, who won her race, and she ran as a Democratic socialist, and that's the Midwest. That's my home state. I actually campaigned for her. So people, regardless of how they identify, are feeling the pain points in an economy that has not rebounded for them if you are part of the working class.
Yeah, Salena, what is your take on this whole affordability crisis vis-a-vis the president's agenda and the working class base that you know so well?
Well, and what happened in Dayton is basically what happened in Pittsburgh, right? 4 years ago. Now our mayor lost, but lost in a Democratic primary. So they really don't have a Republican competition in Pittsburgh. But, you have to be able to talk about issues with a smile on your face, and you have to let people know, basically to steal Bill Clinton, I feel your pain. And that is something that Trump was very effective at doing in 2024. That was something that, and I'm just going to speak about my home state, Pennsylvania, which, as we all know, is like the most important state. Even if we don't want to be, we're the most important state. I had a piece last week. I'm also a columnist for the Washington Post. I sat down with Senator John Fetterman, Josh Shapiro, the governor, Eugene DePasquale, who is now the head of the state party. And they went into this off-year election with and it's not something that would fit in every state, but it definitely fits in Pennsylvania. They went in with this attitude that they were not going to dehumanize Trump, right? Because they know if they want to win, they need Trump voters in Pennsylvania. And they also thought it was a little bit dangerous, right? The Nazi, the fascist, that thing to them with Trump voters like Fetterman or Shapiro never would have won the state had they not had Trump voters. So they went in this race, this statewide judicial no retention race, with that in mind. Not only did they win the judicial, the no to the the yes to the retention, they picked up counties, Bucks County, most important county in the state, just next to Erie County, right? They won county row offices. Now, and that's because they had a different approach. Like, as I said before, not everything is not one state, fits in one state. That fits in Pennsylvania. Now, there's a cautionary tale, though. In 2015, to Nina's point, Democrats won everything in my state and then lost everything in 2016. So sort of like the tectonic plates, like election, people move all the time. They're unsatisfied for whatever reason. And so nobody should have hubris right now. Everyone should be like, what worked? And what should we be cautious of?
And should bring the kind of willingness to listen to the other side that we saw just here. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Please come back soon. Salena Zito, Senator Nina Turner, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Us.
Coming up, we speak to the architect of President Trump's economic agenda about whether it's working and what the president can do to get the cost of living down. You've heard it a million times since President Trump imposed global tariffs. A tariff is a tax on the American people. The only problem is they're 100% wrong. And you know how I know that? When's the last time Walmart, Levi's, IKEA, and Apple paid your taxes for you? The data shows that American companies or Chinese companies are paying the vast majority of these tariffs. Yet despite the endless predictions that they'd pass those costs on to consumers, they haven't significantly raised prices. The companies are eating the tariffs. We've raked in nearly $200 billion from President Trump's tariff agenda, but Trump hasn't just raised billions. He's using the tariffs to bring manufacturing home by putting a price on sending it overseas. He's also used tariffs to force Mexico to control the border and China to stem the flow of fentanyl, a huge priority for the heartland. He's using tariffs to try to get Russia to the negotiating table to end the war in Ukraine. No wonder Trump likes to say the tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language. Joining me now to discuss is the architect of much of the president's economic agenda, though let it be noted that Trump is not a man to follow through on the architect's instructions. Oren Cass, founder of American Compass, thank you so much for joining us. So how do you rate the president's economic agenda thus far?
Well, hi, Batya. It's great to see you. It's so exciting to be on your show. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a fantastic show, and this is such an important topic. I think you have to give a grade of incomplete. I think he's off to a very important start. I think the things they did right out of the gate were the right direction to go. I think it's a real problem when you have a bunch of economists saying like, well, why haven't you fixed and restructured the entire international economy in, 6 months, 9 months? Obviously, this stuff takes time. What's so encouraging to see, though, is that it's working the way it's supposed to. Like you said, we're not seeing these unbearable price increases. Obviously, the economy hasn't crashed. And we are seeing the companies say, OK, we get it. We're going to invest in America. We're going to start building more stuff here.
So part of the problem is that prices have not significantly come down. And a lot of Americans are really still hurting. Affordability in the recent election was the #1 issue for voters. What could the president be doing right now to address those concerns?
Well, I think part of this is a communication issue because, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, prices aren't going to come back down. And frankly, we wouldn't want them to. If prices suddenly started falling, you'd have what you call deflation. People would start seeing their wages come down too. You'd have the sort of situation a country like Japan has struggled with. So, the economic goal has to be price stability. And that's something the administration has been achieving. We're not suffering the Biden-like crazy inflation. We're seeing something, within about a percentage point of what it usually is, what the Federal Reserve wants it to be. And then the question is, okay, so how do you help families make ends meet? And that's where we need, on healthcare, working on drug pricing is super important. On housing, how do you get more people building? How do you make it possible to live in more places so that there are more places with good economies, good jobs, and housing that is affordable? And then how do you create better jobs for people so that their wages are going up? And I think that has to be the core of the agenda.
You've done an amazing job of outlining how we got into this mess in the first place to where working class Americans didn't have a shot at the American dream. So much of what the president is doing right now is long term. It's taking a ship that was pointed in the wrong direction and reorienting it. But as you point out, that takes time. Does he have that time politically? Or are we going to keep seeing what we saw on Tuesday where, Hispanic voters and others who gave him a shot are just not feeling enough of a change and go back to the Democrats?
I think there is time. I always point people back to Ronald Reagan coming into office at the beginning of 1981. I mean, we forget now, they took interest rates up to 20%. They sent unemployment up to 10%. The market crashed. And by the time you even got to Election Day in 1984, those things hadn't recovered, really, certainly not all the way. And Ronald Reagan won the biggest landslide re-election, I think, since George Washington. But what he'd done was he communicated clearly. Here's what the problem is. Here's what we're going to do about it. Here's the progress you're going to start to see. Here's how we're on the right track. And I think if President Trump and his team can do that, I think the American people, I think they're hungry for that. I think they understand, being promised everything's free, everything's win-win, got us to where we are. I think there's an understanding that we have to invest, that there are costs, that there are sacrifices. And if they understand what they're for and what they're going to get out of it, I think that could be the most popular political message we've heard in a long time.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to see the agenda turn to next? What would you like to see the president take on as his next big initiative?
I think the most important thing is education and training. What we call, us wonks call it workforce development, because the college system obviously doesn't work for most people. I think the administration has taken a good step in saying we're actually going to take on these universities that are, collecting hundreds of billions of dollars in taxpayer money and serving almost nobody. But alongside that, we need to build the alternatives. We have to have, the non-college pathways, the apprenticeships, the training programs, partnerships with employers, especially in these places where manufacturing is coming back, especially where we need more energy, especially where we're building, just the number of electricians you need for data centers is extraordinary. And so if we can start getting in that place, getting that stuff in place, I think that's the next piece that people are really going to start seeing a payoff from.
Oren Cass, thank you so much for your service to this country and for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
America's about to get a whole lot skinnier. What politics built around Ozempic looks like and why that's exactly what we need. It's official. In perhaps his greatest gift to the American people, President Donald Trump announced this week that he was giving the people what they want. He's making pharmaceutical companies offer Americans deeply discounted rates for Ozempic. Americans will now be able to get Ozempic and other weight loss shots for hundreds of dollars a month instead of thousands. We can only hope that Botox will be next. Kidding aside, getting down the price of prescription drugs is a top issue for voters, and it's been a signature achievement of Trump's second term. Millions and millions of Americans are obese and suffer from all the comorbidities. Others just wish they could fit into those jeans again. For so many men and women, their bodies are a source of shame and guilt. America losing a collective ton of weight would be incredible for us, physically, psychologically, and spiritually. Let it be known as Ozempic politics. Find simple solutions to what ails us. Things that make us feel and look better and more hopeful about the future. And then, for God's sake, give the people what they want. It's called democracy. Thank you all for joining me today. It's been an honor to have you. May God bless and protect you and the United States of America.